We've finally made it to the final lesson of this NumPy tutorial series. In today's lesson, we're going to learn how we can save and load NumPy objects, because at some point, you're going to want to be able to load data without having to rerun all your code. Imagine you performed a lot of time-consuming operations that gave you some important data that you wanted to save for later. In this example, we're going to pretend that this is that data. We worked hard for this data. So now let's save it. In NumPy, if you ever want to save an array, you can use the save method. And here, all you need to do is provide a name, which I'm going to call npdata, and the data that you want to save. Now, when you run this, you're going to notice in your project directory that you're going to have a file called npdata.npy, and that contains the array information. To load this data, all we need to do is create a variable, or you don't need to, but I would recommend it so you can use it later, and type in npload. And here we need to refer to that file by typing in npdata.npy. Right now, this is conveniently in the same directory. Otherwise, you're going to have to specify the path, whether that's an absolute path or a relative path to this file. Then we're going to print loaded. And what we're going to get as an output is the array that we saved. There are other extensions we can use with NumPy files, but using .npy is good because it also stores the shape, the data type, and other information that allows us to correctly reconstruct any NumPy array. If you want to save multiple NumPy objects, we can use saves or save-z. So for this example, I'm going to create two arrays, and then I'm going to use np.saves and pass in multiple np as the file name. Then you just need to pass in the objects you want to save, such as array1 and array2. Now when we run this, once again, in your file directory, you're going to notice a new file called multiple np.npz or npz. But this time, when we try to load it, it's going to behave a little bit differently. So let's type in np loaded and pass in the file name, which is multiple_np.npz, and this should be load. Then we're going to print loaded. And what you're going to notice is that we're going to end up with an npz file that contains these keys. And that's not really the information we were looking for. I mean, it's very useful because it tells us where we can get the information, but this is not what we wanted. So next, let's duplicate this and type in loaded.files. And this is going to tell us what the files are named in case we want to retrieve that information. Now, to actually retrieve the NumPy arrays, we just need to refer to the keys. So loaded at the key of array_0 and loaded at the key of array_1. And I'm assigning that to these two variable names so that we can print array1 and print array2. And when we run this, we're going to get back the original NumPy arrays. If you'd rather save the data as text, you can also do that by using the following methods. So for this example, I'm going to create some data which will contain this data over here, and it's going to be of type integer. And I'm explicitly typing this out so you can see what happens when we save this information as text. Here I'll type in save text, and this time we're going to type in textdata.txt and pass in the data. Then right below that, we're going to print load text or np.loadText, and we need to pass in textdata.txt. Now, when we run this, what you're going to notice is that we're going to end up with an array of floats. The text file doesn't store the same information as the .npy file does, which means the dtype disappeared, and all the other information regarding this NumPy array also disappeared. The benefit, though, of text files is that they are easier to share, even though .npy files are smaller and faster to read. And you can also export this as CSV. So you can type in csvdata.csv and change this to CSV so we can load it. And when we run this, something went wrong, and that's because the name was wrong. CSV data. But it's going to load it exactly the same way as it did with the text file. And when you open up your directory, you'll notice the two new files we have with the CSV data and the text data. And this method actually has a lot of arguments that you can use with it. Unfortunately, we're not going to cover any of this in this video. But with that being done, we've now made it to the end of this beginner NumPy series. I hope you enjoyed it. There's still a lot to learn, but by now you should have what you need to get started with using it with pandas and for creating your own projects. I will continue teaching NumPy on this channel, but not in the form of a series. The videos in the future will be informational and separated. We will probably also build some projects, but the next step for you is to spend some time every day reading the NumPy docs. They are very well written. This whole series was created thanks to them. Anyway, with all that being said, as always, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.